Hello, everybody. Welcome into another edition of Go with the Flow, presented by R.S. Andrews. My name is Brandon Adams. Happy to have you with us and happy to be joined by Dari Payro from R.S. Andrews, where this week we'll make our picks for the top college football games for the upcoming weekend. And for the first time this year, we'll bring a national game into the discussion, so not just SEC games for us here this week. Obviously, a reminder quickly here about the way the game is played, and then we'll update our standings for the first couple of weeks of the season. When you think about this game, you think about myself, the Dog Nation team, Mike Griffith, Jeff Sintel, Connor Riley, the Dog Nation daily audience. We all weigh in with our thoughts on the games of the upcoming weekend. And then Dari Payro from R.S. Andrews decides if he wants to go with the flow and join the consensus on the games for that particular week. And as you're watching, we hope that you'll play along with us and determine if you want to go with the flow on these picks there as well. We've been doing the show now for a couple of weeks, so we're starting to see some trends emerge as to who's having a good season. In fact, before we start picking this week's games, let me give you a little bit of an update on the standings. And how about the Dog Nation daily audience last week? Big performance from them, going 7-1 overall last week, puts them at 11-5 on the season. That ties the audience right now with Jeff Sintel, also 11-5 on his picks through 2 weeks after a 6-2 performance last week. Mike Griffith, not a bad job by that Dog Nation scribe thus far. He's 10-6 on the year after a 5-3 week. Then I come in there after a 4-4 week a year ago. Actually, Dari Payro, excuse me. I jumped over Dari at 9-7 right now after a 4-4 week. He comes in at fourth on our list for the moment in our standings. I was also 4-4 last week, but not quite as good in week one. I'm at 7-9 on the year. And Connor Riley, after two consecutive 3-5 weeks, he is at 6-10 right now. But obviously, Dari, for those of us who went 4-4 last week, a chance to do better this week. How do you feel about the slate of games on tap here for this Saturday?
I actually like them. Actually like some games this week. At first glance, some of the spreads are little head scratchers, but after digging into them and looking at them a little bit more, there's definitely some games that I really like. Looking forward to getting back towards the top, catching the audience and Jeff.
Well, certainly we're looking forward to seeing how it all plays out here this week as well. And we'll start with Tennessee coming to Georgia. Georgia, a 13-point favorite in this game after being very impressive week ago against Auburn. Tennessee also found a way to cover the spread against the Missouri Tigers in week two. This is a rivalry game and one which a lot of Vols fans have had circled for quite some time, as Tennessee's now riding quite a winning streak, have essentially not lost a game in almost a full calendar year. It was this time a year ago that Georgia played Tennessee there in Knoxville. Georgia got the late cover there in that one. And Tennessee's been all about winning for the most part ever since. 13 points is the number. Mike Griffith, we'll let you start us off. For Georgia and Tennessee, how do you see this one shaking out?
My first prediction is there's not going to be the torrential rain that everybody is worried about. So I'm going to start out with that. And that being the case, I'm going to take Georgia to score on some explosive plays. Jeremy Pruitt's going to take away some of the short stuff. You're not going to see Kyrus Jackson with 9 catches for 147 yards, but you will see George Pickens make some plays. Georgia wins this game 31-13.
So Mike Griffith on the side of UGA right there. Jeff Sintel, what about you? What do you think about the Dogs and the Vols?
I see Georgia covering this line. I like Georgia by about 17, but the number here is 24-7. That's what this feels like to me. Torrential rains or not.
Also on the side of UGA is Jeff Sintel, and now we'll turn our attention to Dog Nation's Connor Riley. Is Connor going to make it a clean sweep and take UGA as well thus far?
I'd like this game a lot more if this number were at 14. Or if you're giving me 13, I think it's a 2-touchdown game where neither side is satisfied with how it turns out. I like 27-13 for some reason. 24-10, something along the lines of that.
So it's all UGA thus far. Dog Nation daily audience not going to disagree. 87% take Georgia to cover the 13 points against Tennessee. And Dari, I'm obviously a big Georgia fan. I wish I could agree on this, but as we get closer to the game, I don't see a problem for Georgia in terms of winning on Saturday, but I do see the point spread heavily coming into play here. I did a little bit of research, and you can tell me if this matters to you. Georgia's had a little bit of an issue as of late when being a double-digit home favorite against Power 5 level opponents. Georgia really just 1-4 in their last 5 in that instance, all of that going back to last season in terms of failing to cover big numbers in those games. They were 3-1 in that spot in 2018, as a double-digit home favorite against Power 5 competition. But the one team they did not cover the spread against in that role back in 2018 was the team they play this upcoming Saturday, Tennessee. Tennessee held on to make it 38-12 that day, in a day which Georgia came in as a 30.5-point favorite. So, Dari, the point for me here is that I see Georgia winning, but when facing a big number at home lately, Georgia has just had a hard time matching that double-digit number, including a whole bunch a year ago. So give me Georgia to win, but if we're doing this from a gambling standpoint, I got to take Tennessee plus the points. However, the flow is clearly on the side of UGA. Do you want to go with the flow and take the dogs?
Well, before I make my pick, I just want to give a shout out and cheers to Georgia Bulldogs, players, coaching staff for the excellent win against Auburn. In celebration of that, we're drinking a little brown water on the rocks today.
You deserve it. Georgia deserves it. Toasting the dogs for a big win, never a bad idea.
Yes. And I'm going to follow it up with taking Georgia. I'm going with the flow. I'm going to lay the lumber, 13 points at home. Both these teams are coming off great games. Georgia was obviously dominant against a top 10 team against Auburn, beat them at every facet of that game. Absolutely loved it. Georgia is Tennessee's first-ranked opponent on the year. So Tennessee's going to be tested. They've been beating a lot of teams that really aren't that good. So even in their win streak, if you go back and look at those teams, yeah, they've been stringing against wins. They do have momentum, but they don't have anybody worth note and anyone near the caliber of Georgia's team, especially their defense. The Bulldogs were 24-point road favorites last year against them, and now they're laying 13 at home. I think it's a really big difference when both these teams are pretty much the same from where they were last year. A lot of returning players to the core of their strengths. The Vol strengths is their offensive line to run the balls. They got Cade Mays now on that line. That'll be interesting of how these players react against him. You also got Georgia. They're going to go against Georgia's strength, which is his defense. They're going to go right through the teeth. I liked Georgia last year, and I think just like last year, Georgia's defense is going to help with that scoreboard. Georgia is 6-3 against the spread in their last 9 games. I like it to go to 7-3 this week. I really love Georgia laying the lumber.
So there you go. We're off and running here on Go with the Flow, presented by R.S. Andrews. Don't forget, much the same way that Dari knows his football picks, he and the entire team there at R.S. Andrews know how to take good care of you as well when it comes to your air conditioning, your heating, your plumbing, electric needs. We're getting to that time of year where it's a little chillier at night than it's been before. Many of you are thinking about the cold weather winter to come, and obviously that means you're thinking about that furnace and that heating system. Is it ready to go to make its way through the winter that's on its way? Well, if you want to get more peace of mind on that, get your system tuned back up to factory fresh specs. Check out our friends online at rsandrews.com. All right, next game to pick in the SEC. And by the way, there's some weather impact in some of these games this week that we'll be talking about throughout our conversation. But for next, let's go on the road to College Station, where Florida gets ready to travel to Texas A&M. Florida 2-0 on the year on the field, just 1-1 against the spread. A&M, by comparison, 0-2 against the spread after failing to cover last week against Alabama, keeping it closer than the experts would have thought against Vanderbilt. They're trying to get back to a little bit better footing here, hosting the Gators as a 7-point underdog here in this spot. Mike Griffith, will turn our attention back to you once again. Florida and Texas A&M. What do you think about this one, Mike? Take it away.
Everybody's high on Florida, but I still don't see a run game, and I think Texas A&M gets this. I mean, Jimbo Fisher, if there's such a thing as pressure when you have a 10-year guaranteed $70 million contract, I'm going to take the Aggies in a mild upset, 20-17 over Florida.
So, Mike, on the side of Texas A&M right there, Jeff Sintel, what do you think about the Gators and the Aggies?
Well, I can assure you, Brandon, we won't have congruency on these picks right out of the back. I think there'll be more jokes about Texas A&M after this game maybe than there are jokes about hair plugs and hair coloring for the two head coaches in this game. I like Florida to cover this number. I know Florida's defense is very leaky. I think it's 15-31 on third down, 5 out of 7 on fourth down. But I think Florida is going to score points in bunches again. I see this something like 35-17.
So Jeff Sintel on the side of Florida there. Now it's Dog Nation's Connor Riley's turn. Connor, give us your thoughts on Florida and Texas A&M.
I'm taking Florida here. I'm all the way out on Texas A&M. I picked them to, keep it a little closer last week, and they just completely neglected to show up. With that, I wonder where this Texas A&M team is at. They had a couple guys opt out before the start of the season. I'm all the way out on Jimbo Fisher. Florida will score. They might get a late touchdown to push it over. Give me Florida here in the 7 points on the road.
Connor on the side of Florida, no surprise. Dog Nation Daily audience disagrees. 71% take Texas A&M to cover, as I've said before. One of the things the Dog Nation Daily audience has in common with the Dog Nation Daily host, there's a pretty strong tendency to go against Florida. So props to the audience for keeping consistent on that. As far as this game goes, Dari, speaking of a tendency to go against Florida, I'm going to do that here too, even though there's at least one number in this game that screams that you'd want to take Florida. Dan Mullen has had no trouble in these spots since being Gators coach, including earlier this year winning as a double and covering as a road favorite at Ole Miss. He's 6-1 against the spread on the road as a favorite in his time at Florida. So comfortable Florida under Mullen has typically been in these road spots. Jimbo Fisher hasn't been a home underdog very much since becoming Texas A&M coach. Did lose and failed to cover against Alabama last season. But if you go back to 2018, as a 16-point underdog, A&M did keep that 28-26 against Clemson, if that matters to you at all. I think the issue here for me is more about the fact that Jimbo Fisher's a very expensive coach who's had two pretty ugly weeks to start this season. And I just believe that SEC teams, SEC coaches, with their back against the wall, have a tendency to come out fighting. And I sort of expect A&M to come out fighting on Saturday. Not a win, I don't believe. I don't think they're quite good enough to do that. But good enough to keep this close under what is kind of a key number of that 7 points. I could certainly see that going down. In fact, that's what my pick is going to be. The trends would say that Dan Mullen's pretty comfortable in the role of a road favorite, but I'm going to go against that trend. I'm going to take Texas A&M. However, and actually that puts the flow on the side of the Texas A&M Aggies by a narrow margin. Do you want to go with the flow and take Texas A&M?
Let me think about that for a second. No, I do not. I'm rolling with the Gators again. I'm going to take them to cover that 7 points on the road. They should have covered against Gamecocks last week. I'm still scratching my head of how's that even possible? What happened? Oh, wait, I know. Florida's defense sucks.
Yeah, right.
Still should have covered even with that. But Florida's offense has scored 89 points in 2 games. And like you said, they have Texas A&M has a very high-priced coach in Jimbo Fisher. His back is against the wall. He's 10-8 in his last 18 SEC games at A&M. He's 18-10 overall. He is 3-8 against ranked teams. Yeah. Talk about pressure. And guess what? This game is another one going into Jimbo's loss column. Okay, so it doesn't matter what pressure he has, Brandon, because he can't play in the secondary, and that's where Texas A&M problems are. And guess what? That's really bad news that they're going against Trask and Pitts. They're going to light them up. Tons of points. Okay, Florida's defense isn't that good, so the Aggies may be able to run the ball a bit. I think it'll be a shootout, a back-and-forth thing for a while, but Florida's passing attack is just way too much for A&M. I also like the over in this game, which is 57. But Florida's going to roll. We're going to roll right through an A&M, and Jimbo's going to be on the hot seat at the end of this year.
Let's turn our attention now to an SEC West showdown. One of the most surprising results of the season was Arkansas's outright win at Mississippi State last Saturday after Mississippi State had been the talk of week 1. Disappointing performance on the other side, though, for Auburn, who was completely manhandled at Georgia. Now Auburn comes back to Jordan-Hare Stadium, as they like to call it, the loveliest village on the plains. They'll play as a 16.5-point favorite against Sam Pittman and the Razorbacks on Saturday. Mike Griffith, Tigers and Hogs. Give us your thoughts on this one.
Yeah, that's too much. I think we saw this Arkansas team was better than people thought. Auburn might have a great young freshman tailback, but they don't have an offensive line. 20-17, Arkansas covers.
So Mike takes Arkansas there. Jeff Sintel, what do you think? Can Sam Pittman make it 2 in a row? Give us your thought on Arkansas and Auburn.
Brandon, I think that line's way too big. I think Arkansas's got something really cooking there with their team this fall. I don't know if Auburn has established an offensive identity yet. I don't know what they are. I think maybe the Georgia game was a very poor test, but I like Arkansas. Do I like Arkansas to win this game? I like Arkansas to make this a 4-quarter game, maybe a 1-possession game in the fourth quarter, but that certainly means I'm going to take those 16.5 points and go woo pig all the way to the bank.
So Jeff has given us a dissertation with some of his picks thus far, but he also might like Mike Griffith on the side of Arkansas here. Connor Riley, your turn. Tell us what you think.
You guys have this all wrong. It's a Chad Morris revenge game. He's going to want to score points. He's going to want to run it up. He's going to want to lay the hammer down there late. I think we're going to see a lot of Tank Bigsby this week, and I think Arkansas might struggle to contain him a little bit. I don't think the Auburn offense is going to have the same trouble establishing a guy like Seth Williams. I know it's a lot of points, but at 16.5 specifically, give me the Tigers here.
So Connor takes Auburn, thus far the only one on that side. Dog Nation Daily Audience. Typically, they like favorites. In this case, though, impressed by the job that Pittman did a week ago. They're on the underdog. 64% take Arkansas to cover the spread against Auburn. I got to go against the audience on this one. I've got to go with Auburn. There's a couple of interesting things here, though. If you look at Auburn at home as a double-digit favorite right now, all this, of course, according to OddsShark, they are 9-9-2 in that role over the course of their last 20 games as double-digit home favorites. They have covered 4 straight in that situation, but those are all non-SEC teams. You actually have to go back to 2018 to find an instance in which Auburn was favored as a double-digit at home against an SEC foe. And ironically, Auburn lost outright twice in that scenario back in 2018 to Tennessee and also to LSU as a double-digit home favorite. So there's some trend stuff that goes against Auburn here, but I think this is a year, and I said this on a previous show, where there's going to be a lot of zigzagging in the SEC. Auburn looked awful last week. I don't expect it to continue 2 weeks in a row. Arkansas got a great win for Sam Pittman, but being on the road again after doing that in Starkville might also be a little bit of a flat spot. I think Arkansas is a better team than some people thought coming into the year, but I also think Auburn is probably better against most of its schedule than they showed last week against Arkansas. 16.5 is a lot of points, but in this case, I think Auburn's the right side to be on. I will go with Auburn, but the flow is on the side of Arkansas. So, Dar, you want to go with the flow and take the Hogs?
I do not. I can't take Arkansas here. I'm going with the Tigers and Auburn. I definitely think they bounce back this week. Give Arkansas props. They came out, start this year. I mean, what a first half against Georgia for them, and then they're able to upset Mississippi State. But I think Auburn's defense is going to come up big against an Arkansas offense that just looks mediocre or subpar at best. Chad Morris knows all the players' strengths and weaknesses and tendencies. I think that's a huge advantage for Malzahn and the Tigers. Arkansas has been playing well, but to go on the road to a team that's won the past 4 meetings by an average of 39 points per game against them, I think is a tall task. Definitely shop the line. We're in on this at 16.5, but it's moved, with a lot of people taking Auburn in the points. So I think right now it's around 14. You may be able to get it at 13.5. I also like the under 48. The under cashed in 10 of Arkansas's last 15 and 6 of 8 of Auburn's last games.
That's a great number.
I like Auburn and under in this game, and I think they really bounce back at home.
Yeah, Dari brings up a good point. You watch this show on Fridays. We pre-record the show earlier in the week to make time to get everybody's picks tabulated, calculated, and everything else. So we have to kind of work off a consistent line that is going to be a little bit different than what you see by the time you get there towards the end of the week there. This is definitely one worth shopping, especially you kind of bump into, that number in between 17 and 14. Those are pretty key numbers as it kind of floats around that area. So be very, very careful, which side you're on as you kind of move towards those key numbers. By the way, speaking of pre-recorded challenges, we kind of move into a portion of the schedule. That's definitely true. Let's move here to Alabama Ole Miss here for a moment. The number we have for Alabama Ole Miss is a 24-point home underdog. There is incredibly bad weather expected to move through the Gulf Coast, expected to impact Oxford, Mississippi. The current forecast for Saturday in Oxford is abysmal. There is at least some chatter, although nothing certainly finalized or even, moving the direction of being finalized. We do have an SEC venue change we'll tell you about in a moment for Alabama Ole Miss, as we're recording this, that has not occurred yet, nor is there any indication it will occur. But there has been at least some internet rumors of a Friday night game, a Sunday game between the Tide and the Rebels, or the possibility this game could be moved to November 7th, which is the week before Alabama plays LSU. This is also a pretty good time to tell you that if you're planning on making any kind of bets for games that could be affected by weather, you need to read the rules for the place that you're placing your bet to kind of find out, what happens in the event that a game is moved, things like that, or outright canceled. That's always a good thing to know about the house that you plan on using. For now, though, after saying all that, we're going to operate as if the Alabama-Ole Miss game is going to be played as scheduled on Saturday, with the Rebels fresh off an outright road win as a touchdown underdog at Kentucky last week. Get a chance to host Alabama here this week. Mike Griffith for the Rebels and the Tide. Give us your thoughts.
Yeah, that's probably not enough either. Nick Saban and Alabama are rolling. Ole Miss is a program that has Alabama's attention. They've pulled upsets in the past, and Saban just doesn't like Kiffin very much. I like Alabama to win this game 41-10.
So Mike Griffith there, he steps up and he takes the Alabama Crimson Tide there in that spot. Jeff Sintel, what do you think about Alabama-Ole Miss? Give us your opinion.
I think that's going to be enough, actually. I think about Alabama, Missouri earlier this year. What was that number, 19? I see this kind of feeling like 40-20, 40-21 type game maybe. I can see the mighty Kiffin's adding some points on late. But I think this Ole Miss offense, I kind of believe in this Ole Miss offense. I think Matt Corral has a pro arm, probably has the best overall arm strength in the SEC right now. And what they're doing with Jerry and Ely, and what they're doing with, all those others, you got Elijah Moore, you got John Rice Plumlee, a couple of names that will ring true for a lot of Georgia football fans, at least recruiting fans. I think the mighty Kiffins will cover that spread.
So Jeff takes Ole Miss there. Connor Riley, your thoughts on Alabama and Ole Miss?
I love Ole Miss plus 24 here at home. We know Lane Kiffin can't wait to sort of stick it to Saban in some way. I don't think he's ever going to stop scoring. I don't think he's ever going to try to stop scoring. I think this game could be a weird final score, sort of like a weird Big 12 high-scoring high school football game. Something like 63-42, something along the lines of that. I think Ole Miss is going to try and score as many points as they can this week, knowing they can't stop Alabama. Give me the Ole Miss Rebels here.
So Connor's on Ole Miss right there. Dog Nation Daily audience, they go the other direction. They take the Crimson Tide, but not by a wide margin. Maybe Lane Kiffin earning some respect with the way the Rebels have played here through 2 weeks. 61% of Dog Nation Daily listeners and viewers taking Alabama minus the 24 points on the road here. Dari, I don't have a ton of research on this game other than to say that with all the talk that Alabama has generated through 2 weeks, it seems weird to think that after 3 weeks, they might have a losing record versus the spread. But after all, they didn't cover week 1 versus Missouri and did get the nod last Saturday against Texas A&M. I just don't see this Alabama team having a losing record ATS through 3 weeks. That's enough for me to be on Alabama here. I also don't think Lane Kiffin is well liked by Nick Saban. Mike Griffith mentioned that a moment ago when he made his pick. I think that's probably true as well. But if Saban has a chance for a late score in this game, I think he probably takes it. I don't love this pick. If we weren't doing this as a part of a contest, there's no way I would bet a 20-plus point road favorite in any situation. That's just not, I don't think, very good value. But the rules of the contest dictate we must pick the game. And from that standpoint, I will take Alabama for the reasons that I mentioned, but I don't have a super strong feeling on this game. So with that in mind, the flow is on the side of Alabama. You want to go with the flow and take Alabama.
Well, since it's 2020, I'm going to go off script here, and I'm not taking Alabama.
Is that right?
I'm going against the flow. I'm going to take Ole Miss here. 24 points is a lot of points to cover, against an Ole Miss offense that can score. But this is Saban versus Kiffin. Saban pulled Kiffin out of a coaching dumpster and gave him a second chance at life. And Kiffin returned that favor by leaving him hanging a week before the national championship against Clemson, which Alabama lost by like 4 points. Saban hasn't forgotten that. There's bad blood there. Mac Jones and his wide receivers are going to have a field day against that porous Ole Miss secondary. Saban's going to keep the pedal to the metal in this game. But, I don't think he really runs up the score because he has respect for Kiffin and his offense. So I think he's going to get a decent-sized lead, and he's going to try to just pound the clock, bleed the clock, run the ball. I think Ole Miss gets a late TD to get a backdoor cover in this game.
We should point out this is the first time in Go with the Flow, presented by R.S. Andrews history, that Dari has ever gone against Alabama. In fact, that was kind of a joke in season 1 of our program, which was sight unseen. Dari sort of takes Alabama against everyone because that's the respect that he has for Nick Saban. So it sounds like you haven't really changed your opinion of Alabama necessarily. You just think the Ole Miss offense is potent enough to maybe, score just enough points where 24 becomes a little too much to match.
I do, and I think this is just a unique, game for Alabama and Saban. A lot of people are going to be like, he's just going to keep the pedal to the metal, which I think he will until he gets a pretty good lead. But I also Saban's a guy that he's a number cruncher. He's a disciplined guy. He has enough restraint to know that those personal things aren't going to get in the way of him just winning this game convincingly. And I think he's going to do that, and he's going to assert his control of that offensive line and just make it painful. I don't think he's going to fully just score at will and call all those big, deep throws as much as he wants to. I just think he's the discipline of the game and the discipline of controlling himself in those situations. And that's why, it's kind of against the grain on this, that I think Ole Miss will be able to cover this late.
So good picks there from Dari Payo from R.S. Andrews, but even better work being done by R.S. Andrews, the entire team when it comes to your air conditioning, your heating, your plumbing, electric issues. R.S. Andrews just knows this stuff. Those systems behind the wall that none of us really pay much attention to, R.S. Andrews, the entire team over there, they've devoted their life to taking good care of that. So story after story, they've been delivering smiles. They can deliver a smile for you. An example I always use, if your water heater goes out, listen, that's a disaster for you and your family. No one wants to take cold showers. Well, the good news is at R.S. Andrews, they can replace it for you the same day in many cases. So find them online and find out more about their story and understand how they can impact your story. Find them online at rsandrews.com. With that said, we now go to our next game, which is Mississippi State going on the road to Kentucky. As I said before, Kentucky not able to stand up as a home favorite last week against Ole Miss, the other Magnolia State team coming in right now. And while you had new coaches in place at Mississippi State, these two programs know each other very well. These are crossover opponents traditionally in the SEC East and the SEC West. Mississippi State goes to Lexington on Saturday. Despite the fact that Kentucky has yet to win, they are still a favorite in this game over Mississippi State. 2.5 points is the number we're going with here. Mike Griffith, start us off on Mississippi State and Kentucky.
I think the party's over and it's basketball season in the Bluegrass State. Give me Mississippi State to win straight up 31-23.
So Mike takes the Mike goes Mississippi State there on that one against Kentucky. Jeff Sintel, your thoughts on Mississippi State and Kentucky?
Now, this is the tough game for me to think. Which one of these games were false positives is Kentucky just – now this is the tough game for me to think. Which one of these games were false positives is Kentucky just a false positive all season long, especially with what they did against Ole Miss despite all those rushing yards. I think they went over 400 rushing yards last week. They're going to be at home. I expect Kentucky and that defensive staff to kind of play a zone and let Mississippi State just kind of try to pick them apart and go little by little. What does it say in the SEC? If you can run the ball and you're at home, you usually can fare pretty well, especially against the slim point spread. I'm going to take Kentucky, and I'm going to take to win this game. I think they'll cover the 2.5. And I don't know if we might see some Joey Gatewood at some point of this season, maybe even in this game right here as well.
I certainly appreciate Jeff doing the Gettysburg Address version of his Kentucky-Mississippi State pick there. Connor, your thoughts on the Bulldogs and the Wildcats. Take it away.
You cannot be all in on KJ Costello like I am and bail after 2 weeks. I know he didn't play well last week. He's had a lot of turnovers so far to start his season. I think that's just going to be a natural thing that comes with these Mike Leach offenses. But I still like Mississippi State here. I like the 2.5. I like that they're an underdog. this Kentucky team just has not played up to, I think, its potential so far this season. And I think that continues. I think Mississippi State goes on the road and gets a nice little win here.
So Connor takes Mississippi State. Dog Nation Daily audience, you won't see this on your screen. They also go heavy on the side of the Bulldogs as well. I don't have a ton of analysis on this, Dari, other than to say that for many people, it probably seems a little weird given the fact that of the two teams, the one to have done something this year was Mississippi State. They did beat LSU head-to-head, winning that game outright as a 16-point underdog. Kentucky, by comparison, has not been particularly good in either of the last 2 weeks. Yet they're still a favorite at home here over Mississippi State. Usually when the betting markets put that number out there, a number like that out there, they know something the public doesn't. I'm going to side with the house on this one. If they're making Kentucky the favorite, I'm going to go with them on that. Much the same way I kind of touted Jimbo Fisher a little earlier in a back against the wall situation. I think that's also true for Mark Stoops here too. It'd be hard to be 0-3 after the public gave you a chance to beat Auburn, and then you would lose to both Mississippi schools after that. They've got a grind of a schedule coming beyond that. Be tough for Kentucky to get off to an 0-3 start here. I think Stoops fights a little bit like a caged animal on Saturday. I don't think Mississippi State is very good. You and I have kind of gone round and round about that. So I will take Kentucky in this spot, but the flow is on the side of the Bulldogs. You want to go with the flow and take Mississippi State.
I'm going with the flow. Give me Leach and the points. I'm going to take Mississippi State. Arkansas grounded the air raid last week. They played a lot and mixed up a lot of different types of zone coverage that got, Leach said it got them really off balance with their timing. And I also think it was like you called it last week, saying that it was kind of the hangover after the LSU win, that they're going to kind of have a little letdown game, which they did. I think they get back on track this week. I expect Kentucky to try to do what Arkansas did of playing a lot of zone, but I think Leach is going to have them prepared now that he's seen that. Mississippi State has been pretty good on defense against the run. I think that gives them the edge here. In addition to that, Ole Miss, like I called it last week, had a lot of success against Kentucky's secondary, gave them a lot of problems. And, I think Mississippi State's going to do the same. This is also somewhat of a homecoming for Mike Leach. He was a former assistant head coach at Kentucky, and he's never come back to Kentucky to play there as a head coach. So I think he's kind of got it circled. I think he's going to come out firing. I think they're going to win this game on the road.
Next game we turn our attention to, and this is a huge asterisk in terms of our discussion here. We're talking about Missouri. It was originally slated for Missouri at LSU. LSU playing in that spot as a 20.5-point favorite. That is the number that we worked off of when our Dog Nation experts, who you'll hear from in a moment, when they made their selections, they were working with LSU as the home team, and the number being 20.5. In the moments and the days since then, this game has been moved from Baton Rouge to Columbia, Missouri. Weather this week in Louisiana expected to be terrible, so they make, you don't see this happen in the SEC very much, where you flip from the home team to the away team, but that is what's happening here with this game moving to Columbia, Missouri. Missouri's not very good, but Dari, I don't know if you see the same stuff that I do. There's actually been a pretty substantial swing in point spread because of this. I've seen what was a 20-point number down to as low as 14 on the basis of the venue switch. This is one of those moments where either you and I just get a very easy pick because we work with information that the Dog Nation team didn't have when it made its picks, or this is a situation where you think that Missouri's got nothing to offer, and so therefore it doesn't matter where the game is played. I'll save your thoughts on that until you go in a moment, but please note, for those of you watching this live heading into the weekend, when the Dog Nation team made these picks, this was all with the understanding the game was in Baton Rouge and LSU was a 20.5-point favorite. With that in mind, Mike Griffith, you're up first on now LSU at Missouri. Go ahead.
Yeah, Missouri's got to show me something. And I think LSU's going to score all the points that they can, and just like Ole Miss is. So I think LSU's going to win this game 42-10.
So LSU is the pick there from Mike Griffith. Jeff Sintel, how about you?
Remember, young cats, you got personnel in the NFL, personnel opted out. You got guys figuring it out. Tremendous talent advantage here for the Tigers still on this one, especially those young receivers I think that will come along, especially Eric Gilbert. I think this number feels like 21, 17 or whatever. I'm going to take LSU getting better every week. John Emery, remember, could have done for Georgia in the backfield as well. He had his first 100-yard game last week. I like LSU to cover this one. I'm thinking 24, 28 points.
So also LSU for Jeff. Connor Riley, go ahead.
I think Missouri might be one of the worst teams in the SEC, and based on how Arkansas is playing, maybe even potentially the worst team in the SEC. They got to figure out their quarterback situation. This offense is not very good. They struggled big time last week against Tennessee. I like how LSU got right last week. They did some stuff on offense. Miles Brennan coming around a little bit. They still got some weapons there. 20.5 is a lot, but if it were 21.5, I'd probably take Missouri. But since it's 20.5, give me the LSU brand of the Tigers.
So Dog Nation Daily Audience also heavy on LSU here. They take him to the tune of 73%. Once again, working with the Tigers as the home team. The 20.5 point number, it is now almost certainly a lower number than that. As I said before, the early line move, it's maybe as much as a touchdown as the game shifts to Columbia, Missouri. But doing some research that I didn't expect to be doing for this game now being on the road, that's not really been a problem for LSU under Ed Orgeron. As a double-digit road favorite, Tigers are 4-1-1. They covered as a 20-plus point road favorite a week ago against Vanderbilt. The truth is, maybe I'm being greedy here, maybe just being stubborn, but I'm going to obviously keep the number 20.5 to be fair to our colleagues here. And even with that, I'm still taking this number on the road with LSU at Missouri. I don't think Missouri can put up much of a fight right now. And I think that LSU's demise was prematurely described on the basis of what happened against Mississippi State. That was a bad day, but this is still a good enough team to cover a huge number. You know, I'm not sure there's any crowd to speak of whatsoever in Columbia this weekend, so I don't think that's much of a factor. Maybe the travel's an issue here, but honestly, I think you could put this game in any stadium. I think LSU is still blowing out Missouri right now. So I'll go LSU minus the 20.5. That puts the flow heavy in the favor of the Tigers. In fact, I believe it's clean sweep. Do you want to go with the flow and take LSU?
We'll do a clean sweep, family pot. Usually with large spreads like this, you look at taking the points and the underdog. This is a little, a little crazier now because you're change of venue. It being in Missouri, the line's already dropped by like a touchdown, and you were still taking it at 20.5. But I'm still confident in the 20.5. So everyone out there, I really love this at 14.5. Missouri's typically done pretty well at home against the spreads over the past few years. But when you look at Mizzou, there's like really nothing good to look at. I was really disappointed in them last week. They were not competitive at all in that game. I mean, there is no fight in this team. That same spirit's going to carry over to this LSU game, especially with LSU looking to stomp who's ever in front of them after their loss to Mississippi State. Missouri is 1-8 against the spread in their last 9 conference games. LSU is 16-5 against the spread in their last 21 games in the month of October. So lay the lumber. Take LSU to cover those points.
We'll turn our attention now to the team that got beat by LSU last Saturday. That is Vanderbilt. They host South Carolina. Gamecocks 0-2 after a little bit of a rock fight against Tennessee in week 1 and a game against Florida a week ago in which the Gamecocks kept it closer than the experts expected, but maybe not close enough to truly ever threaten winning that game. In fact, another questionable Will Muschamp field goal attempt really stopped South Carolina's real chance of getting heavily involved in that game. Nonetheless, the Gamecocks go to Nashville against Vanderbilt on Saturday. The Commodores are 13-point home underdogs. Mike Griffith, your thought on the Gamecocks and the Doors here. Take it away.
I think nobody's going to be watching the game, but we've got to pick it. So I'm going to take South Carolina to win. This is a big game for Will Muschamp. They're all big games for Will Muschamp. I'm going to take South Carolina 17-13.
So Mike goes South Carolina right there. Jeff Sintel, what about you? Vanderbilt, South Carolina.
Well, first of all, we've talked about shootouts earlier in this week with a lot of these teams. Man, I think this is going to be a paperclip or maybe a rock fight. What we got going on here, maybe some spitwads. I don't think this will be a very thrilling game. Is this the battle for last place in the SEC East this year? It might just be. I think Carolina still has more than Vanderbilt, but I'm going to take Vanderbilt and those 13 points. I think South Carolina still wins, but I don't think they win by 2 touchdowns.
So that's Jeff Sintel on the side of Vanderbilt. Connor Riley, your turn.
Both these teams stink. Give me the home dog. Give me Vanderbilt plus 13, and I don't want to think about this game for another second.
Connor takes Vanderbilt. Dog Nation Daily Audience disagrees. 55% here on the side of South Carolina, minus the 13 points on the road. This is one where I think some trend data actually does probably matter. First of all, South Carolina has not been in this spot very much. They've only been a road favorite of any stripe twice thus far in the Will Muschamp era. Actually lost head-to-head straight up as a favorite at Tennessee last year. They got blown out bad in a game they were favored by 4.5 points. However, going back to 2018, they did win 37-14 as a 1.5 point favorite at Vanderbilt, as luck would have it. But here's the number that I think really means something here. When you go back to the start of the 2017 season, when Vanderbilt has been a double-digit underdog at home, they've essentially put up almost no fight whatsoever. When they've been expected to play badly at home, for the most part they have, they are 1-5 against the spread in 6 instances as a double-digit home underdog, dating back to the start of the 2017 season there. I don't know that Vanderbilt puts up much of a fight against South Carolina either. Gamecocks obviously got their problems, but this might be one of the few chances they have all year long to feel good about themselves. My expectation is they take advantage of that. I actually really like South Carolina here. I'll take them minus the points. However, the flow, that actually puts the flow on the side of South Carolina. You want to go with the flow and take the Gamecocks, Dari?
I do. I'm going to go with flow, take the Gamecocks. I'm going with the better team here. Normally, I think 13 is a high number to cover for South Carolina. But they're playing against Vandy, a team that's just really not that good. They're the worst offense in the SEC. South Carolina is the 3rd-ranked team in the nation in time of possession. I think that continues this weekend. Look for them to control the clock all day. Vandy is 4-11 against the spread in their last 15 games. Really like South Carolina here to get a cover under Muschamp's belt.
So we will now turn our attention for the first time this year to a national game. There has not been really a national game worth talking about thus far this season, but there is on Saturday when number 7 Miami goes to number 1 Clemson. This is a big deal. Point spread still favors the Tigers. They are 14-point favorites in this spot there in Death Valley, but nonetheless, it's our first national game of the season. And with that in mind, Mike Griffith, go ahead and give us your thoughts on Miami and Clemson.
Yeah, I'm going with Clemson in this one. I like Clemson. I think they're explosive. They still got Trevor Lawrence. Miami's still Miami. And I think Clemson's going to win this game 41-24.
So Mike Griffith is on the side of Clemson there in that one. Jeff Sintel, how about you when it comes to Miami and Clemson? Go ahead.
I think there's a bunch we're going to be calling paper tigers after this one, but I don't think it's going to be the Clemson Tigers. I think it's going to be the Miami Hurricanes. I like Clemson big in this one. I can see this one going something like 44-20, 44-17. Clemson still has a lot of talent, and when those young guys rotate in with a hefty point spread, I think that talent level is still going to be better than what Miami's used to dealing with. I like Clemson big in this game.
So Jeff takes Clemson as well. Connor Riley, your thoughts on the big ACC game?
I'm going to go against the grain here. I think Miami's got a nice little offense there with the Rick King and Rhett Lashley calling plays. I don't necessarily think this game is all that close, but I think a backdoor cover touchdown helps make it a little bit closer for Miami. They do have some talent there, some nice skill guys, and some guys, especially on the defensive side of the ball, that can do some things. So give me Miami plus 14.
So
here.
Connor on the side of Miami. Dog Nation Daily listeners and viewers disagree to a huge tune. 83% on the side of Clemson here. Dari, for me, the thing that makes this game interesting is this is not a spot we've seen Clemson in very much, really, in quite some time. You have to go back to September 7th of last year to find a regular season game in which Clemson was less than a 20-point favorite. A&M did keep it slightly closer with the Tigers back in that spot. But for the most part, Clemson's been trying to find a way to stay motivated against huge 3+ touchdown underdogs. Vegas and the betting markets apparently think Miami is a little better than that. I'm not ready to put them there, though. I've been impressed with the Hurricanes through a couple of weeks thus far, but you've got to really prove something to me before I expect you to stay close against Clemson. This Miami team hasn't proven that yet. So Clemson minus the 14, I'll take it. It could end up feeling like a sucker play, just kind of a blind stab in the direction of Clemson. But until Miami shows me something on a big stage, I certainly would rather be wrong on Clemson than wrong on Miami. So I'll take Clemson here. And that puts the flow on the side of Clemson. Do you want to go with the flow and take the Tigers?
I do not. Give me the Canes and the points. We know what Clemson brings. Dabo, Trevor Lawrence, Etienne, Amari Rogers. Both these, but Miami has a top-ranked defense. They have an explosive offense, and they got a capable quarterback that's a playmaker with the one that transferred there this year. Both of these teams are scoring 40-plus points per game, but Miami's defense is ranked 12th in the nation. Clemson also has a top 15 ranked defense, but Miami's had an extra week off to prepare for this game. This is just another game for Clemson. There's no pressure here for them. They've been there, done that. But I think 2 TDs worth of points is the perfect recipe for the Canes to cover. And keep in mind, Miami has probably one of the best duo tight end combination in the country. I think they're going to have big games against Clemson. I think it's going to create some problems against Clemson's defense. Don't really know if Miami has enough to win this game, but I definitely think they have enough to make this a really entertaining game this weekend.
Good analysis there from Dari Payro. Should be fun to see how that one plays out. Before we're done here on Go With The Flow, presented by R.S. Andrews, let's turn our attention back to the Georgia Bulldogs. And as we close out every show, the over-under for the week, 43 is the number here. And a little bit of a surprise coming from one of our Dog Nation scribes. Mike Griffith, your thoughts on the point total for the Dogs and the Vols? Go ahead, sir.
I picked 31-13 specifically to hit the over. Those guys in Vegas know what they're doing. The first 2 games for Georgia have been under. I think a lot of people are going to jump the under. And for that reason, I think it's going to be the over. I think Jeremy Pruitt's going to jump up and press these receivers and challenge Georgia to make big plays for 4 quarters, and I think they will. And that's why I'm going with the over on this game.
So it has been a while since anyone on this show has taken the over in a Georgia game, but Mike Griffith just does that there. Jeff Sintel, how about your thoughts on 43 expected points? Go ahead.
Well, as much as I wish we could pick the over-under on the Ole Miss-Alabama game, we got to pick Tennessee-Georgia like we do every week. I still think this is going to be stymied defensively. I can see Georgia getting to 30. I can't see Tennessee getting to 10. I like the under here. Dogs under with the Vols.
And now Connor Riley over under the 43 for Tennessee and Georgia.
Until those cowards in Vegas put a Georgia total in the 30s, don't even bother asking me for an over-under. I'm going to take the under with this Georgia team. The weather might be a little nasty, though. Mike Griffith is telling me otherwise, so we'll see what that looks like there. Because of that, because of the way I think both these teams want to lean on their defenses, I think it's going to be another low-scoring game. Give me the under here.
So a strong take from Connor, huge take from the Dog Nation Daily audience as well. 96% on the under here. Dari, this Georgia team just does not play games that go over. You had the Tech game last November with the 50-plus point explosion from the Georgia offense, but other than that, you have to go back a full calendar year to find, Georgia playing an over. They were over the last time they played Tennessee in Knoxville, but it took a defensive score late in the game to cause that to occur, and I guess maybe a uncharacteristic couple of broken plays defensively by Dogs in the first half. But since then, Georgia, it just all goes under. I don't see any way this game on Saturday comes close to matching 43 points. To me, this is the biggest sure thing in sports gambling right now. Georgia games go under. Do you want to go with the flow and take the under?
I'm going to go under 43. We talked about it last week. You said, how low can they make these? It was 45 last week. Well, now we're at 43. Maybe next week it drops down to 41. When it starts getting into the 30s, that's when it gets interesting. But you got 2 defensive coaches, going here. I don't see a lot of points being scored. The under is hit in 10 of 11 of Georgia's last games. And it's also hit in 6 of Tennessee's last 7 games. So I think it's going under, and I'm long on the under with Georgia this year.
Yeah, it's amazing to me just how much of a sure thing this has been for folks who've been watching this pretty closely, and certainly that's worth having a toast to. And by the way, you can be toasting yourself when you make the decision to trust R.S. Andrews from your air conditioning, your heating, your plumbing, your electric needs. They show up on time. They do the work that's promised, the price that's promised. I refer R.S. Andrews not just here on the show, but in my personal life as well, for people in my neighborhood that I hear who have those issues, or really anyone that I come in contact with. I know that I can recommend R.S. Andrews for anyone who may have a, situation with their air conditioning or electrical issue or anything like that. I know R.S. Andrews is going to take good care of them, so I can happily recommend them to you here on the show as well at rsandrews.com. Dari, hope you enjoy the games this weekend. Hope you get a chance to take care of a couple of cocktails too while you watch some college football, and we'll look forward to speaking to you again next week here on Go With The Flow, presented by R.S. Andrews.
Sounds good. Go Dogs.
Enjoy the games, everybody.